All right, there should be a quick update tonight. I want to talk about the bounce off of the bottom and why it's likely going to continue. And the first thing I want to look at is the bond market. Remember, TLT here is the ETF for the 20-year Treasury bond. The last thing we saw was a rejection below a negatively sloping 200 daily moving average. And then we got the lower high rejection and confirmation to the downside. And we're sitting right here at the very critical support at 90. So remember, if we break down below 90, that's telling us that money is leaving the bond market. And that is not something you are going to see in a growth scare recession market. That is one of the narratives going around on why stocks are likely going into a bear market. And you're not seeing confirmation from that from the bond market. Now, if the bond market were to start rocketing off of this support and break back above the 200 daily moving average, that would be a lot more concerning for stocks. So next thing I want to look at is the NASDAQ 100 triple Qs. And today we were up 1.13%. And this is what is known as a pivot. And when you get a pivot, it essentially means you're starting to see evidence in the price action that a trend could be shifting. And a pivot means from a downtrend looking for a pivot into an uptrend, you are finally getting a higher low and a higher high. And tonight I want to illustrate this pivot focusing on price action because that is what I teach you to trade is price action. And in order to do that, I want to switch this over to the hourly chart where every candle now is only 1 hour price action, not a whole day. And you can clearly see during this downtrend, we just continued to make lower highs that were followed up by lower lows. And every time the market tried to bounce, it was just another lower high rejection as the market continued to trend lower. Now, why is this a pivot? Because you can see from down here at the bounce at 467, we had a lower high here. And while it looked like we were starting to get a rejection, we broke back above that level and made a higher high. So if I just draw a straight line through that, you can clearly see we now have a higher low and a higher high breakout from this previous high. And this is the very early beginnings of a trend reversal. Essentially, what needs to happen is continuation now, and we need to get another higher high after this higher low pullback to test the breakout. And this is only confirming more and more on the daily chart that we may have seen a bottom, and what was lower highs and lower lows in a downtrend could finally be reversing into what is now looking like a higher low and another higher low followed by a higher high and another higher high. So this is an extremely early way to find a trend reversal. We need more confirmation now on the daily chart to confirm this is indeed a bottom. And if it is a bottom, we could go a lot higher, which easily takes us into the 493 to 500 zone. And it could take us even higher into the 510 to 516 zone. So right now I would manage risk right here at the 5 daily EMA. If we start breaking above 482 tomorrow, that is very bullish, and it means we are likely going into the 490s. And that will confirm we're getting more confirmation that this pivot low is in and we're ready to go higher. And another important thing to note today is that volume did start to drop off today. So I talked about the increase in volume at a capitulation bottom, which marks a low or at least a tradable low before a very sizable bounce. And then today we did get the volume reduction. So the large volume sellers are starting to dry up. And when the large volume selling dries up and the buyers come in, price goes higher. So that is what you're going to be looking for in the price action. You have very clear levels of risk here at 482. 477, and the most important would be the previous low right around 468. As long as we're above 468, I think you could easily stay long because, as I said last night, this is a tradable low or a tradable bottom. Over here in SPY, it's the same exact story. We are looking for a tradable low or a tradable bottom right here off of 556. As long as we can hold above this 550 zone, this could be a pivot developing in SPY, which could take us all the way up here towards 570 and possibly even higher into the 580s. So keep that in mind. You have a very clear risk level at 556. And in the short term, we have a resistance at 565 and 572. So watch those levels tomorrow. It's going to be very clear from price after we get the PPI data, which direction we want to look, and then follow price from there. And quickly, I also want to look at Bitcoin because Bitcoin is also at a very important resistance. Again, these are all lower highs within a downtrend. So I want to delete this arrow real quick just so you can see this. This is a downtrend of lower highs and lower lows. And right now, Bitcoin is bouncing up below a 200 daily moving average and resistance zone right around 84,000. So from 84,000, if the Bitcoin bears are still selling, you are going to get another rejection, and that is going to take you down to that price target at 73,000. So Bitcoin is very simple. It is risk off below 84,000, and you really need to see some sort of higher lows and higher highs before you get a trend reversal. And that means we would need to break above 84,000, which means if we get above 84,000, which is back above the 200 daily moving average, you can possibly start looking to get more bullish in Bitcoin. But while it is below 84,000, look for that rejection, which could take us down to 73,000. So that is the path Bitcoin is currently on. Doesn't mean it has to be correct, but you have a very clear price action trigger right there at 84,000. So I think right now, I think the triple Qs are telling the best story and the most important thing to pay attention to, because the tech sector does lead the way very often, and it will be the first to bottom. And this is looking like a bottom pivot off of that support. So focus on price tomorrow. It will be PPI data, so we should get more high volume trading, which should help move price along from here. So I would expect anything but a flat day. If you want to come trade with me, the best way to do that is TSC Trade Alerts, where you get all of the buy and sell alerts for the exact percent allocations I am taking for the TQQQ and the SQQQ. You can find out how to join by clicking on the link in the description of this video. So thank you for watching, everybody. Now go crush this market.